Hi, and welcome to another episode of SWITCHCast, a podcast delving into the world of film, brought to you by the team at Switch. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Charlie David Page.
I'm Jess Fenton.
I'm Daniel Lamon.
And I'm Jake Watt.
It's Thursday the 7th of September, 2017.
On this week's show, why are so many of the best directors making the move to television?
And look out, comic book fans, word on the street is someone else is getting an origin movie. Who is it, and who should play the iconic character?
And as always, all our reviews and giveaways.
Let's kick off this week with the long-awaited adaptation of Stephen King's It. Die-hard King fan and master hyperbolist Daniel braved this one, so will you ever be able to sleep again?
Well, I can say as a Stephen King fan, I'll be sleeping much better now after having seen this film. In the town of Derry in the late 1980s, children are going missing. A lot of children. Not many of the adults seem particularly disturbed by this, but the kids are, especially a group of misfits that call themselves the Losers Club. Each of them start to see strange and frightening things, their deepest fears manifested, and only when they share this with one another do they realize that all of these things have something in common: the presence of a vicious, horrifying clown calling itself Pennywise, played by Bill Skarsgård.
I saw something. There was this clown.
Yeah, I saw him too.
Look, it's all connected by the sewers. That's where it lives.
Bill, if you'll come with me, you'll float too. You'll float too. You'll float too. You'll float too. You'll float too.
Convinced this thing has something to do with the disappearances, the Losers Club decide to track down Pennywise and stop it before it takes anyone else, including them. Adapted from arguably Stephen King's most beloved novel, this first chapter in the proposed two-part film has built up a lot of anticipation. Fans of the novel, though, can breathe a sigh of relief. Director Andy Muschietti has delivered a worthy, often wonderful adaptation, one that carves its own path while still honouring the integrity of its source material. With a gorgeous classical feel, the film balances its moments of horror with genuine humour and tremendous heart, bolstered by a terrific cast, especially the Losers Club. In fact, I'd argue that this has a more authentically 80s feel to it than anything we've seen in the recent wave of 80s nostalgia, recalling vivid memories of Poltergeist, Gremlins, and The Goonies. It's not particularly scary, rather, and more importantly, uncomfortable and disturbing, retaining the allegory of child abuse that makes the novel so affecting. And any worries about Bill Skarsgård as Pennywise disappears almost instantly. His performance is fantastic, playful and vicious and animalistic. There are a few stumbles here and there, but overall, it is a very satisfying film, both for fans of the novel and those just discovering this horrifying and beautiful story. The second chapter can't come soon enough. I'm giving this one 4 stars.
This movie looks pretty damn good and scary at the moment.
What's exactly what we wanted. Like every kind of step of the way, every kind of turn this adaptation has taken has kind of been met with kind of like wary optimism. And so the fact that it's been well received enough that now it looks like they're going to complete it, because there was no guarantee they were going to actually follow on with the second part. The fact that it actually seems to be paying off is very, very exciting, and a nice change after the slew of very mediocre King adaptations we've kind of suffered through in the...
You guys must be very happy to be having a good Stephen King film this year.
Oh my god!
Yeah, after like Mr.
What are you talking about? The Dark Tower was the best movie ever.
Shut up, Jess!
It was so good.
I can kick you off this
I'm
podcast.
not at all
I have a
boring.
button that can kick you off it, and I will do it if you say this again.
I'll be good.
Even Mr. Mercedes, to be honest, like the TV show Mr. Mercedes has been a little bit underwhelming, so...
I haven't even bothered to start Mr. Mercedes. I'm
trying
to finish the last book in that series at the moment, and it's not great.
Yeah, I think from memory, like of the last book kind of goes in a weird direction, but yeah, I don't know, like Stephen King's It has that all those expectations from the miniseries and the great novel it was based on, and the initial reviews so far that have been trickling in, like the advanced reviews, have been like really positive. So yeah, there's kind of nothing to not get excited about at this stage. It just seems like a bit of a surefire thing,
and a balanced and intelligent adaptation that kind of seems like it's doing what needs to be done for the book.
Yeah, and like as I said before, like kind of we're even thinking about like the sequel at this stage. because I guess like in our own minds, this is going to be awesome. So, who's going to play the adults in It Part 2, or, what's It Part 2 actually going to be called and whatnot.
Yeah, exactly. It puts kind of a good feeling for any kind of future King adaptations. Like there's that series that J.J. Abrams is developing, Castle Rock, which is kind of plays with the shared universe, which is really exciting considering the fact that he kind of spearheaded the adaptation of 11/22/63, which I would say is probably the best adaptation of a King novel since probably The Mist, I reckon. Like, it was really solid, really, really exciting, and captured that sense. I think the thing that adaptations of King's work, what kind of they fall flat on their face, is never quite establishing the sense of menace and the sense of kind of the sadistic side of human nature. They just kind of go for the cheap scares and the cheaper, crappier narrative plot devices that can plague some of his books, but they lose the human nature element. And I think that's everything about this adaptation of It suggests that this was a major concern for everybody involved. And because It is one of the most passionately beautiful novels that he's written, I think, like, as much as it's a horrific novel at points, it's so human and so heartfelt that being the focus of this adaptation is very, very, very exciting. And hopefully will kind of suggest that this kind of direction with King's work is actually where it should be going. He's I think, the most popular novelist living today. Like, his books just sell millions upon millions of copies. But because of that, he's generally seen as being a populist, when I think he's probably one of the greatest American novelists of the past century. It's just that he chooses to write in a form and in a genre that isn't necessarily high literature or that kind of stuff.
Well, he has like a high volume of output and stuff as well. So
yeah, I mean, he releases like 2 books a year.
I remember reading the other day about Richard Bachman.
The Richard Bachman stuff. Yeah,
he was like told that an author couldn't release more than 1 book a year and still be taken seriously. So he invented this alter ego to get rid of this massive output of ideas that he had.
Yeah, he's such a fascinating man, and his work is oftentimes feels very important in the observations that he tends to make. So yeah, the fact that this has been well received and seems to be fostering a re-interest in his work as being critically exciting is kind of a relief as a King fan. It's like, being a King fan is kind of being consistently disappointed when you go and see the film adaptation. So this is, it's a nice breath of fresh air. It is in cinemas now, and you can find my full review at maketheswitch.com.au.
Also out this week is That's Not Me, the Aussie indie comedy that's taking local festivals by storm. Jake went along for the show, so how did you find it?
In That's Not Me, Alice Fulcher plays Polly, an aspiring Melbourne actor, and Amy, Polly's identical twin sister. Amy is a much more successful actress in LA and has just landed an HBO series with Jared Leto. After turning down a role as an albino on a popular soap opera, Polly considers a move to LA to stay with an actor friend who once starred in a David Lynch film, played by Isabel Lucas.
You've made it. It's what you care about. Do you even enjoy acting?
Follow your dreams. You can be anything you want.
I hope I can make it before I die.
Highlights include Fulcher as identical twins, Andrew Gilbert as a loving dad who just wants to hang out and play guitar with Jared Leto, and Isabel Lucas as an actress battling against her sexpot image. From first-time feature writer and director Gregory Erdstein, That's Not Me is a marvel of indie filmmaking. Shot over 9 months in Melbourne and LA, it was filmed for a mere $60,000. The budget kept down with the participation of various friends in the film industry. This film looks and sounds like $1 million. 3.5 stars.
This movie was at the Sydney Film Festival earlier this year. Unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to see it. I'm pretty sure the screening was sold out, but I was really excited to. Not only was this a comedy and an indie, but it was a female-led one. So it's exciting to see that it was doing well, and it is actually lives up.
It sounds fucking nuts. Yeah. I've never heard of this film before, and now I really, really badly want to see it. Like, what? Turning down a role as an albino? Like, what?
Some of those movies is like, it's made by people who are obviously, involved with the local film industry, and it kind of has a ton of really funny in-jokes and personal anecdotes and stuff in it. Like the David Lynch thing, and a lot of Isabel Lucas's character, you can just tell the struggles that she goes through as a hot blonde chick trying to forge a career as an actress in LA. The stuff she says about it, the anecdotes she brings up are obviously personal. Like having to battle for roles against like porn stars and things like that. So the entire movie kind of feels like that. Like these people like Alice Fulcher and Gregory Erdstein are just drawing on their own personal experiences and stuff they've heard from friends. And so the movie kind of feels very personal, I guess, and authentic.
And considering the budgetary beatings that the Australian film industry has taken over the last 3 years with all the budget cuts, it's nice to hear about a film being made as a labour of love for that medium and for the industry that it exists in.
Yeah, I went to like a Q&A for this film at the Sydney Film Festival, and Gregory Erdstein mentioned that the movie only really got made because a lot of friends were involved, and he got an inheritance. So this movie is virtually made with like sort of his inheritance money. So yeah, it was kind of like just really pretty like ingenious, I guess. Like, the movie did cost $60,000, and you watch it and you just kind of like, this could be like any Australian or even low budget American film. Like, they've really kind of made the money go the distance.
Which, considering how many major films and major blockbusters just look cheap as hell and spend millions of dollars, is a pretty big compliment. That's a huge achievement within itself.
I guess a lot of money, goes towards spending $10,000 on, a star's catering needs and things like that. This movie was like Isabel Lucas's.
I demand my M&Ms. I only want the green ones.
Well, like Isabel Lucas, she actually filmed her role when she was back in Melbourne on holidays, visiting her family and stuff. And she's like, okay, I've got some free time. Let's just do this.
Nice.
And she's like sort of personal friends with Alice Fulcher, the actress who's married to Gregory Erdstein, the director. It's a really nice movie. Like, it's a good movie in itself, but the fact that all these friends and colleagues and whatever have all banded together to make this film is also pretty awesome, I think, especially for a local film.
Aww. Everyone's so happy and loving each other and being so supportive.
Well, after this discussion, Jess, I'm with you now. I want to see this film. This sounds great.
Gregory Erdstein also mentioned, like, after the film screened, that there's a theory that in Australia, an audience member has to go out and tell 4 friends for an Australian film to actually make money. So I've got like no hesitation sort of in recommending this movie to 4 friends or 4 people I know, or 4 people I don't really like that much, or just 4 people in general. I'll just sort of mention this movie
Which
randomly
one's are we?
on the train.
Which ones are we?
We're the ones you don't like very much, aren't we? We're definitely the ones you don't like very much.
Knew it.
That you endure on a weekly basis.
But to make an Australian movie, to make this type of movie successful anyway, it really comes down to word of mouth in Australia. Yeah, if you are interested in seeing this movie, go and see it. If you enjoy it, go and tell some friends, and that's it. You can find my full review at maketheswitch.com.au, and That's Not Me is in cinemas now.
Also out today is The Dinner. Based on the Dutch novel of the same name, this sees 2 couples, Richard Gere and Laura Linney, with Steve Coogan and Rebecca Hall, sitting down to dinner to discuss their sons and what to do about a crime the boys have committed that has been captured on film, but the boys have yet to be identified.
So what's the subject at hand? You know what it is.
It's about the boys.
How much do you know?
How much do you know?
He's gonna turn us in. He's gonna turn us in. I know.
These boys have committed a horrific crime.
It was an accident.
This case will never be solved, but is that what we want?
These are good boys. What's done is done.
Both dark and witty, this is the 3rd time the material has been adapted since the novel's release in 2009. This latest version by director Oren Moverman, the man behind 2014's Love and Mercy, is the first to adapt it to English. With a strong cast and an almost singular setting, this delves deep into human relationships and their strains when only food is put on the table.
This sounds so intriguing. I mean, it also sounds like it sounds very similar to that Roman Polanski film Carnage that came out a few years ago, the adaptation of the play God of Carnage. Though that was very funny. I don't imagine this one's going to be particularly funny. The setup sounds very intriguing. And Love and Mercy was a great film. I think that's actually, apart from the fact that it's, got Laura Linney in it and Rebecca Hall, which is enough of a reason to be excited about anything. The fact that it's the next film from Moverman after Love and Mercy is really, really exciting.
Sure, if you liked Love and Mercy, which
Did you not like Love and Mercy?
I did not.
I actually liked it. I usually hate those movies, but I like that one.
Yeah, I usually, like, after our biopic discussion a few weeks ago, and I was like, I fucking hate biopics about musicians. I loved Love and Mercy. I was really impressed. I thought Paul Dano, and particularly John Cusack, I was like, I've never liked John Cusack this much. Like, what's going on? It's an interesting setup considering that idea of what's happened recently with the whole Charlottesville, the identifying the white supremacists who were attacking and assaulting people, and the fact that we've been able to use social media to actually identify a lot of these young men and to have them brought up to trial for their crimes. This is actually quite an interesting and kind of prevalent setup for that.
There are so many layers to it. It's like it's not only just about right and wrong, but when family is involved, because in this film, Richard Gere and Steve Coogan actually are brothers, which means so they're brothers and the sons are cousins. You know, where does right and wrong fit in when family's involved?
And what are your parental duties in terms of protecting your child? I mean, it was in there's another film that was released earlier this year, a Romanian film called Graduation, which wasn't very good, but it wasn't that idea as well of what is your responsibility as a parent to the protection of your child if your child has done something wrong. It's an intriguing premise. I've also heard really great mutterings about this film for a while, so I'm quite intrigued to see it. Yeah.
It's such an amazing cast. It makes me excited.
Any chance to see Laura Linney? I mean, the last time we got to see Laura Linney in something, she was just having a cameo in Nocturnal Animals with the most amazing wig in existence. Like, it's just fun. Maybe she'll get to do more than just stand there and...
She's in that new Netflix show, The Ozark.
The last thing I saw him was like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the second one. She was the human.
I'm sorry, Laura Linney is in the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie?
Did you miss that, Daniel?
She was one of 3 humans alongside Megan Fox and some other guy.
I'm horrified.
Hey, Frances McDormand was it Transformers?
Oh yeah, that's
true. Everyone has
everyone needs that new wing on their house.
For money.
It's so true. Well, at least Laura has now come back to the real world by, had a little stint with some camp brilliance in Nocturnal Animals, and now she's back to hustle with Richard Gere and Steve Coogan and Rebecca Hall.
This is the first time Laura Linney and Richard Gere have been together since Primal Fear.
Primal Fear? My God. I didn't remember that she was in that.
Yeah, she was the opposing counsellor.
Oh. I didn't remember the end of that film. I remember everything else about that film was relatively blah until the very end. I was like, oh, that's clever. That's a nice twist.
Oh, that's clever.
Thank you.
Oh, titillating.
Well, that's the dinner in cinemas today. Also out is The Lovers. Chris got caught up in this twisted romance and filed this report for us.
The Lovers is Azazel Jacobs' highly naturalistic spin on the bedroom farce, starring screen legend Deborah Winger and Pulitzer and Tony-winning playwright and actor Tracy Letts as a middle-aged couple going through the motions of a marriage that long ago lost any sense of passion, with each of them finding that passion elsewhere. For Mary, it's an Irish writer, whereas for Michael, it's a ballet teacher. But an accidental act of intimacy reinvigorates something in Mary and Michael's marriage, and the two begin what I guess might be called an intramarital affair, each cheating on their lovers with, well, each other.
I'll tell my wife it's over.
I'm gonna tell him, I promise.
I can't stop thinking about you.
Any chance we can find some time during the day?
I've hardly seen you last week.
I've been overly occupied.
So you're screwing your wife now?
As if.
Jacobs isn't interested in salacious humour or gaudy sex romps, but rather the ways in which loneliness and deception swirl around inside these two specific characters. Winger and Letts are fantastic, and craft two wholly defined real people, but the film never really escapes the feeling that it might just be a really well-documented exercise from an impressive acting class. The writing is what lets the film down, as while it may be amiable and well-performed, the film ultimately feels hamstrung by its concept. I'm giving it 3 stars.
You can find Chris's full review at maketheswitch.com.au, and The Lovers is in cinemas now.
Also in cinemas today is the golfing epic Tommy's Honour. In 1866 Scotland, a 15-year-old Tommy Morris, played by Jack Loudon, heads to the golf course with his father. Old Tom, played by Peter Milan, is a legend, a greenskeeper's greenskeeper who established the standard 18 holes per round. His son has soon to surpass him as a golfer, and despite their shared passion, the two constantly clash heads.
The game is catching on in England. You will be a wealthy man. Your place is here.
I don't want to spend my days teeing up gentlemen who think they're better than me. Can you not see that?
What do you think you'll be doing?
Making my own way!
Tommy's Honour is an intimate, moving tale of the real-life founders of the modern game of golf.
So, here's an interesting question for you all. Are there really any great golf films that come to mind? I mean, probably the immediate ones are Happy Gilmore and Caddyshack, but...
Yes. Or both comedies.
Both comedies, not dramas.
Epic.
Definitely not what you would describe as epic. No.
They're not epic golf films, but they're great.
I have to be honest, I've never seen a film about golf. I've not seen either Caddyshack or Happy Gilmore. I would like to see Caddyshack, but I find Adam Sandler annoying.
That's Happy Gilmore.
That's Happy Gilmore.
Is it?
Yeah, Caddyshack is Bill Murray.
No, I said I've always wanted to see Caddyshack, but I don't really want to see Happy Gilmore because I don't like Adam Sandler.
Let's talk about some other classic golfing films because I think that's...
Sure, let's go for that.
Oxymorons are flying fast in this golfing discussion.
So, who's seen the 1996 romantic golf movie Tin Cup, starring Kevin Costner? Anyone? And Rene Russo? No? Okay,
sorry.
What about the...
Wait, Kevin Costner made a movie that wasn't about baseball?
The Legend of Bagger Vance? Anyone? Anybody?
I have seen that. I've seen it.
Yes. Let's go back a bit further in time. From 1952, Spencer Tracy and Katharine Hepburn in Pat and Mike. That's a real
I like
classic.
to think I'm pretty up to speed with the Tracy Hepburn films. I'd never heard of that one. I know that Katharine Hepburn really liked to play golf because The Aviator told me that, so maybe that's the reason why. Does that count? Does The Aviator count as a golf film?
Well, The Aviator says so.
I don't quite think so. I mean, that must have been a really big era for golf films because just the year before was Follow the Sun, and then the year after, Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis starred in The Caddy. So that was a
My
real
God, it's the
cinematic...
Last week we discussed the Renaissance in LGBTIQ plus films. Now we'll discuss the Renaissance in the 50s of the golf film.
Well, it was a regal sport, wasn't it? So,
but I've just done some quick research on this golfing epic, Tommy's Honor. I didn't realize that Peter Mullen is a fucking great actor, and it's got Sam Neill in it. And I would watch Jack Lowden do literally anything because he's so pretty. Like Jack Lowden was the other fighter pilot in Dunkirk, the one that that ends up crashing and is rescued by Mark Rylance.
Not Tom Hardy.
Yeah, the one that isn't Tom Hardy, the one that you see the face of during the film. Jack Lowden, but also I'm quite surprised at the idea of Jack Lowden playing a 15-year-old because he does not look like he is 15 anymore.
Put him in some knickerbockers and a page boy hat, and you never know.
And he's got a moustache in the film. Like he's 15 years old, and he doesn't quite have Peter Mullen's ridiculously regal beard, but he does have a moustache and does not look at all like he's 15.
He's actually 27.
What? Oh, see, there you go. There you go. Another adult playing a teenager. We talked about that, didn't we? With Miss from the
and also Ali's Wedding, Jake, right?
Oh yeah. That guy's old.
Ali's Wedding, where the actor is far older.
Jake's Jake's tapped out of this one. He's had enough of the golf discussion.
No. I was actually looking up Tommy's Honor, and it's actually directed by Sean Connery's son, Jason Connery. This is his first movie.
Oh really? Wow. Oh, sure.
Keeping the Scottish spirit alive and well in that family.
And he's really bald. I'm just looking at the photos of the guy is massively bald.
Maybe we've sat here ripping into the golf genre, but maybe actually this is a new classic, and maybe audiences will fall in love with Tommy's Honor and kickstart a new renaissance in golfing films.
Here's hoping.
Also out today is Namayara Project, an Australian documentary concerned with the legacy of iconic Indigenous artist Albert Namayara, the first Indigenous artist to be internationally recognised. The impact of his work was such that he essentially started the modern Indigenous arts movement and brought it to the attention of people all over the world, leading him to become the first person of Aboriginal descent to be made an Australian citizen. However, his Aboriginality was never forgotten by the Australian government, who treated him equally with praise and contempt.
I venture to say he was not looked upon as belonging to Australia only. He was a world figure.
Yes, he was a citizen, but yet none of his children were citizens. Here you find that strange business of a man that's earning a lot of money is made a citizen.
You can't be taxed if you're a ward of the state, if you're a part of the flora and fauna.
We're trying to teach our younger generation. Keep this legacy strong.
This documentary has an even greater purpose, though. In 1983, decades after his death, the government sold the copyright to his work to an arts dealer. This documentary is the centrepiece of the Namayara Legacy Trust, a campaign to raise funds for the Namayara family to buy the copyright back and benefit from the financial legacy of Albert's work, a legacy that rightly belongs to them.
Finally, part 1 of National Theatre Live's production of Angels in America is in cinemas from Saturday. Chris experienced this theatrical masterpiece and filed this report for us.
Tony Kushner's Angels in America is genuinely one of the greatest plays of all time. I could wax poetic about my love for this crazy, emotional, intellectual, hilarious epic for hours, but I'll try and keep this short. Though currently being performed on Melbourne stages in an equally impressive production, let's talk about the National Theatre's broadcast of Part 1, Millennium Approaches, starring Nathan Lane and Andrew Garfield at the head of an incredibly impressive ensemble, ably directed by Marianne Elliott. Taking New York at the height of the AIDS crisis as its inroads to addressing what it means to be a human being alive in modern times, Kushner's text is what really shines through here, along with Nathan Lane's live-wire performance as one of the great stage demons, Roy Cohn. Garfield is admittedly less impressive, but relative unknown Denise Gough shines through as Harper, the wounded, self-medicated Mormon housewife. The play is staged well and filmed impressively, but feels incomplete without Part 2 to immediately follow it. Not least because the two pieces of text combine so intimately, but also because Elliott's staging so clearly relies on a structure that is yet to pay off. But it's still just so goddamn incredible. I'm giving it 4 stars.
I'm incredibly jealous. I'm so jealous that he got to see this. Like, this is a fucking event. For those who've seen Angels in America in any of its incarnations, either on stage or in the incredible miniseries that came out in the early 2000s, like, this is quite honestly, I think, the best play ever written. It's just perfect. It's gargantuan. And the fact that, all the things I've heard about the National Theatre live production, both from Chris and also just in general since it opened earlier this year, that it's just exceptional. So, yeah, I'm very, very excited to see this and very jealous that Chris has already seen this.
It's interesting that the story of Angels in America is still one that is so relevant today. I just think that's so interesting.
Well, I think it's because, I mean, yes, it concerns itself specifically with that period in 1985 and 86 with the AIDS crisis. I mean, the play only covers about maybe 3 months of time in its entire 7 hours if you put both Part 1 and 2 together. But the thing that I think makes it so phenomenal is that saying that something is universal and timeless is kind of a bit of a catchphrase to fill in a gap when you don't really know what to say. But Angels in America really does that. It's about what it is to be a human being, what it means to love and to fear and to hate, to want, to be desired or to desire, to know that death is an eventuality and an approaching eventuality, to deal with your own mortality. It asks questions about the idea of God, spirituality, humanity, nihilism, sentimentality, our place in history, how we interact with one another, how we interact with the world around us. It really is a play that actually kind of deals with everything and somehow does it whilst being incredibly specific, very personal, very funny, and deeply, deeply moving. I literally could just spend all day talking about all the ways that I love this play. It's one of my favorite pieces of art I've ever come across.
It also seems to have received some amazing reviews, the actual National Theatre production of this.
And that's pretty significant because, I mean, it's not an easy play. The demands that it asks, like there are points where you have like the stage directions where it says like a burning book bursts out of the floor and then disappears in 30 seconds. Like the roof caves in, ghosts appear, people fly, people climb ladders into heaven. Like weird shit happens in this play. The provocations that Tony Kushner gives the production are pretty exciting. And so that's one of the things I'm also really excited about with seeing the National Theatre live production. And I haven't let Chris tell me how they do this. It's actually just how they solve a lot of the problems. And this is a 7-hour epic. This is basically the Everest of Western theatre. Any attempt to do so, you do at your own peril. And you kind of have to be very brave to do it.
So you can catch Part 1 of Angels in America from this Saturday, and Part 2 is in cinemas from the 16th of September, so in the next few weeks we'll have our review of that as well. Now let's check out the upcoming films in our trailer wrap. Here's the first teaser trailer for Downsizing, starring Julianne Moore, Matt Damon, Michelle Williams, Christoph Waltz, Kristen Wiig, and directed by Alexander Payne.
Get up and open your eyes. The world is filled with things to see.
You may find yourself in another part of the world, and you may find yourself behind the wheel of a large automobile.
I know like any Alexander Payne movie is cause to be excited, but I'm kind of just looking forward to seeing Christoph Waltz play another good guy role. I think Christoph Waltz is like a really...
Oh my god, not a bad...
He's a really good... Yeah, he's like a really good actor, but he's just like so overused in bad guy roles right now.
And he looks bored. He looks bored every time he does them.
He totally does.
Excuse me, I'd like to point out he's won 2 Oscars. One of them was for playing a good guy.
Yeah, actually, he is wonderful in Django. Like, he's the only, apart from obviously Django himself, he's one of the few characters you really root for, and like there's a beautiful sensitivity to it. But like, as much as the cast is just fucking great, it's really the fact that it's an Alexander Payne film that has me really excited about this one. I mean, I remember seeing Election as a teenager, and it was pretty life-changing to see that cinema had the capacity to be that acidic and pointed and incredibly funny at the same time. Like, in a lot of his films, like he directed The Descendants as well, didn't he? That was a really wonderful film and was some of George Clooney's best work. Yeah, look, it's Alexander Payne. Sign me up. I'm there. Plus, it sounds like a great premise.
Yeah, I love the kooky concept.
The synopsis: a social satire in which a guy realizes he would have a better life if he were to shrink himself. Like, that sounds absolutely insane from the get-go.
It's kooky. I like kooky.
And we like it when Matt Damon does kooky, and it's got Kristen Wiig in it. So...
Yes.
Bruce Willis is also in this.
Bruce Willis is in it?
Yeah.
There are so many people in it.
Maybe he'll give a good performance for the first time in like fucking decades. I think it's just opened at Telluride, I think, and it's gotten great responses already, like already Oscar talk for this film. So yeah, damn great. Sign me up. I'm there. Downsize me.
Tiny Matt Damon.
It's just like nice to see these guys as well, just like stretching into really weird directions. Like, this is such a, as you mentioned before, like the premise of this movie is like so like odd, but Alexander Payne, massive cast, like none of these people really have any reservations about trying something so weird. It's kind of refreshing.
Let's hope it's another Her, another nice surprise like Her.
Yeah.
Oh, I love Her.
Well, Australian audiences will have to wait until Boxing Day to catch Downsizing. Now let's take a look at Mark Felt, the man who brought down the White House.
How long have you been in the FBI? 30 years. That's a lot of information.
I give you the guardian of the American dream.
Mark Phelps. Fidelity, integrity, bravery. Ladies and gentlemen, the G-Man's G-Man.
What is it?
You better get down here. 5 men were caught early this morning in the Washington headquarters of the Democratic National Committee.
Here's what we know. The men who broke into the Watergate are not the end of this thing, but the beginning.
No more interviews with White House people without permission.
What?
We put the investigation to bed in 2 days.
The director of the FBI ordered the FBI to stop its own investigation.
The nation tonight is in the midst of what may be the most critical constitutional crisis in its history.
I mean, apart from the fact that that is a fucking stupid title for a film, like, let's just get that out of the way. I have nothing but positive things to say about the rest of this trailer and like this film, but the title, like, what? It's like Valerian in the City of 1,000 fucking star planet thing. Like, it's just so long.
I've got a better title. Like, this is my dream title for this movie. Okay, you ready?
Yes, please go for it.
The 100-year-old FBI agent who climbed out the window of the White House and disappeared. I mean, it sounds pretty similar to another movie that's out there at the moment, but I think it's catchier.
I don't know. It's more concise. At least it tells you exactly what it is you want to... But hey, regardless of the fact it has a fucking stupid title, I love a good Watergate film. And there are quite a few really good Watergate films. All the President's Men.
And this one looks like a really good one.
Nixon, Dick. It's a long list of great films. And I mean, I have to admit, this is how much of a nerd I am. When it was revealed that Mark Felt was actually Deep Throat, I was really disappointed because that was a thing I never wanted to know. I wanted it to be like one of those wonderful mysteries like who's the Zodiac Killer or who's Jack the Ripper. And we just never knew the answer to.
What is Mr. Big's real name?
Did you just say, what is Mr. Big's real name?
Yeah.
Oh, good. That's why I laughed and I thought, no, maybe she didn't really say that.
No, because that was one of like a mystery that we didn't want solved, and they bloody solved it anyway.
Yes. But at least what's interesting about this, what this trailer kind of gives me a bit of confidence in, is that it's actually an interesting story to see. We've seen so much of the machinations of how Watergate happened from Woodward and Bernstein, and then Oliver Stone shows us the machinations of how it happens in the White House with Nixon. I'm really excited to see what this perspective is, and it's actually quite a well-constructed trailer, apart from the very clunky ending with, oh, we've got a name for you. It's Deep Throat.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. We didn't get that earlier. But it's a really great cast, and the trailer makes it look like an intriguing thriller.
Yes, I'm looking forward to seeing Liam Neeson not kill anyone for 2 hours.
I know, how nice is that? Like, it's like Ryan, oh, that's right, Liam Neeson is a really good actor.
You forget after all the trash he's done lately. I mean,
This is the man who played Oscar Schindler. Like, we should never forget that fact.
I know, but sometimes you do, because he made Taken and then Taken 2 and then Taken 3
Taken 27.
and then other variations.
Oh my god, there are so many variations of that fucking film. I didn't mind A Walk Among the Tombstones. I remember not hating that. But I also don't remember anything about it other than, oh, that was all right. So no, it's nice to see Liam Neeson being given a role that's actually worthy of his talent. I actually would have really liked to have seen him do Lincoln, because originally he was supposed to play Abraham Lincoln for Spielberg. And I would have actually really liked to have seen that. As great as Daniel Day-Lewis is, I would have been really interested to see
The problem with that is that Liam Neeson struggles to lose his Irish accent, no matter,
Yeah.
regardless of the character. So, yeah, it just wouldn't have worked in Lincoln.
Except in Schindler's List. He's pretty good with his German accent in Schindler's List.
And in this trailer, it just seems like he's being really gruff, so that's how he gets over it.
Be gruff. Be gruff, Liam. Be gruff and
Gruffy up.
expose the White House. Go forth, do the good work. Be felt.
All right, finally, let's take a look at the mockumentary Killing Gunther.
Gunther may be the most feared hitman working in the industry today. If you want to be king, you have to kill the king.
Everyone knows who he is. Gunther. Gunther's...
Where is Gunther?
I'm right here. Guess who?
He's the greatest hitman ever.
Bullseye. I will be the guy who killed Gunther. I put together an unstoppable team.
Just erase that. When I found out that there were a bunch of assassins trying to kill me, I got pissed off.
All right, this one looks great. I love a mockumentary. Usually, Christopher Guest is the go-to man for this, but this one
The
is
master of mockumentaries, Christopher Guest.
But this one's Taron Killam, who is a Saturday Night Live alum. This is his directorial debut and first big one since leaving SNL. So I'm really excited to see what they've allowed him to do, especially with Schwarzenegger. I mean, for a first-time director, I mean, yes, he's proven himself in sketch comedy, but to do a whole film, a mockumentary film, and then for a studio to give him the money. And obviously the cast is filled out with, like his wife, Kobe Smulders, and other SNL people and friends and stuff like that. But in order to be given the freedom and the money to pull Schwarzenegger, I'm excited. I reckon if this has got, at least financially, the backing of a studio for something like that, I'm excited to see what he's done with it.
And Schwarzenegger looks delightful in it.
It does look delightful.
He looks like he's having so much fun. I would not be surprised if he was actually not being paid that much for this. He just looks like he's having the fucking time.
Yeah, and it almost looks like he'll be able to make fun of himself in this, because he's always, the big guy with the bazookas and the guns and killing everyone, and finally people want to kill him.
He's like, I'm not running a state anymore. I can do whatever the fuck I want.
All of Schwarzenegger's, his comeback movies, since he's been old, have been pretty interesting, I think. They've been legitimately interesting choices that sort of play up to his elderly tough guy image, or they kind of skew it or invert it or whatever. So yeah, this one looks pretty.
He seems to be very aware of his legacy, which is very cool, and it's nice to see him playing with that legacy a bit.
And his mortality.
He's a smart guy. Like, if you ever see an interview with Schwarzenegger, he's fine to kind of, he'll roll out all the catchphrases and do all that type of stuff. He doesn't take himself particularly seriously.
He gives the people what they want.
Yeah, exactly.
He's very aware of his place in the world.
I was just really excited to see Alison Tolman in this trailer. Should have been Emmy Award winner from Fargo, Alison Tolman. She's great. I love her. She's wonderful. So yeah, I want to see her be funny with an accent. That's great.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh, yeah.
God, she's just so fucking good in Fargo. Let's spend a while just going on how fucking great she is in Fargo.
She brings a tear to your eye. She's so good.
She does. She's gorgeous. That scene in the snow, in the snow blizzard. Oh my god.
That one scene.
I mean, yes, it's Fargo, so it's like 3 seasons of snow. So But it's that. Yeah. Oh, that's a great show. That's a great show.
Yeah.
I'll stop now.
Yeah. I can't wait for Killing Gunther, and there's so many more trailers out this week, including Crash Pad, Brawl in Cell Block 99, and The Party. So to check out all these trailers and more, head to youtube.com/MakeTheSwitchAU.
In home entertainment news, Via Vision are once again delivering the goods with a pair of exciting war documentary Blu-ray releases, both part of the award-winning PBS American Experience series. The first, Last Days in Vietnam, is a nail-biting, Oscar-nominated snapshot of the final American retreat at the end of the Vietnam War. As the North Vietnamese close in on Saigon, those still holding the line are forced to evacuate as quickly as possible. But for the American troops, their priority is to save as many of the South Vietnamese as possible. Rory Kennedy's impressive documentary feature is immediate and arresting, and thanks to its pinpoint focus on the human stories at the end of the war, tremendously affecting. This Blu-ray release includes both the theatrical version and the extended broadcast version. I'm giving this one 4 stars. It's the second release, though, that's the real coup. Ken Burns' Emmy Award-winning 10-part series, The War, which looks at the American involvement in the Second World War from the perspective of 4 small American towns and how they were affected, both on the front line and at home. 6 years in the making, The War is a gargantuan and breathtaking achievement, almost equal to Burns' legendary series The Civil War. At nearly 14 hours, it moves meticulously through the war, uncompromising and deeply human, combining contemporary interviews, dramatic readings of historical documents, and jaw-dropping, harrowing footage, much of which was probably never seen by the public before. Co-directed with Lynn Novick, The War is a masterpiece of documentary filmmaking, probably the finest documentary I've seen on the Second World War, and Via Vision have included the complete extended version of the series, along with a mountain of deleted scenes, commentaries, and other features. I'm giving The War 5 stars and crossing all fingers and toes that they've got Burns' The Civil War on Blu-ray just around the corner.
I guess the Civil War is probably regarded as being Burns', magnum opus. I guess, it's like his most widely recognized and awarded documentary. But really, any Ken Burns documentary is worth a watch. Like, the guy, he goes so deep, doesn't he? Like into topics that not even just the war stuff, but like baseball and jazz.
I'm more inclined to watch a documentary if I see his name attached to it. He's made an amazing documentary about the history of New York. There was that great documentary he made about the Roosevelts, which was incredibly detailed and fascinating. And like the one he created on Prohibition and the Dust Bowl, he brings a sense of integrity and grace to every subject that he makes a film at. And with The War, what's so kind of overwhelming about it is it sets up the premise of going, we're going to just look at these 4 small American towns, and yet somehow is able to encapsulate the entire American experience of the Second World War without compromise. There's footage in this series that is really hard to watch and incredibly graphic, and even more so for hearing the words of people who went through those experiences, speaking about what it was like to kill another human being for the first time and to realize that that was what the cost of war was, to be taken into landscapes that you're completely unprepared for, and the kind of ignorance with which the Americans initially walked into the war expecting that it would be a relatively easy venture and then realizing the quagmire that ended up in. The whole time I just kind of sat there watching this thing going, how did they construct this? How did they construct something this impressive?
It's such a deep dive, isn't it? Like, he just goes sort of so far into the details and the minutiae and maybe one person's sort of story. The scope, I guess, is just so impressive.
What he essentially, with the Civil War, he essentially redefined what documentary television was. Everything ever since was different. Little bizarre anecdote. For those of you who, like me, love Christopher Nolan's film Interstellar, all the interviews at the beginning of the film with talking head interviews about people talking about, all of the crops dying and all the the dust storms and stuff like that. That's actually clips from Ken Burns' documentary on the Great American Dust Bowl, mixed in with I think with the Ellen Burstyn interviews. That's the only one that it wasn't from that documentary. He's actually using footage from Ken Burns' documentary on the Dust Bowl in Interstellar, which is pretty freaking cool.
Interesting.
So yeah, there's a little bit of Ken Burn anecdote for you. The War. I recommend both documentaries highly. They're both fantastic.
Well, both Last Days in Vietnam and The War are available on Blu-ray and DVD now, and you can find Daniel's full reviews at maketheswitch.com.au.
In a surprising step following his Oscar success with La La Land, Netflix announced this week that they'll be working with acclaimed director Damien Chazelle on his new Paris-set musical series The Eddy. This isn't the first time a significant director has stepped over from film to television, but considering his recent win as Best Director at the Oscars, this might be one of the fastest in recent times. Is television just offering too good an opportunity for filmmakers to refuse? And what does this mean for cinema?
So I think that the reason why so many filmmakers are heading over to TV is just the expanse that they can work with in TV. I mean, you've got such an immense canvas that you can use. You can fill 8 hours of TV and tell a story that you never could in cinema. And I think that's part of the reason why Damien Chazelle has decided to take this particular concept over to Netflix, to have an 8-part series that's a musical. I mean, you just couldn't do that on the big screen.
And it offers, I think, the thing that, if you look at the list of the directors of late who've made the jump from film to television, a lot of them are directors that don't like compromise. So I think it's also the fact that television, to a certain degree, has given a lot of these filmmakers a lot more creative license to do whatever the hell they want. There's a lot more freedom to it, I suspect.
I think that the wall between television and film has been crumbling ever since, I'd say maybe like The Sopranos.
Yeah.
That divide is getting smaller, and directors are realizing that it doesn't have to be one or the other anymore. You can flip-flop between media and between projects.
And TV's not like a bad, dirty word anymore. It used to be so scorned as well, you know. Oh, you're a TV actor, you're a TV director. It was, you know, and now it's actually something that's equal to cinema.
And with so many, I mean, a lot of the really great auteur filmmakers, I think, are increasingly finding it hard to be able to justify working in cinema because of the budgetary and the studio requirements. Like David Fincher, we haven't had a film from David Fincher since Gone Girl. We haven't got an announcement of a film for David Fincher since then. But we know he's working in television. Yeah. I mean, Soderbergh moving over from film to television to create Behind the Candelabra and The Knick. Even a director, like an international director like Paolo Santorino, when he moved from doing The Great Beauty and Youth to doing The Young Pope on television. I think it must be getting progressively harder for these directors to be able to execute their very singular visions. And Damien Chazelle is definitely a director who has a very uncompromising singular vision with the work that he does. Yes. That these places like Netflix and HBO Amazon and AMC.
With television, the nature of television changing itself, you're no longer restrained by, quote unquote, the network anymore. And with so many new avenues, with, as we said, Netflix and Hulu and Amazon and stuff, they're gobbling up content. There is such a huge demand for it, and now we have to supply it. And so people who never would have had a chance before are getting it, and people who were, you know, stuck in film or whatever are now sitting there going, look what I can do.
And as far as Hollywood studios go, you know, they're becoming more and more conservative in a time where less and less people are going to the cinema, whereas TV's actually opening up boundaries. Like they're being more risky, they're taking more chances. They can get away with a lot more than they used to. And so I think you can, for certainly for something that is going to reach a large audience, so i.e. your either Hollywood studio level or your Netflix level, you can get away with and deal with a lot more serious, dark, controversial topics on TV than you can in cinema.
And it's also the format of television invites us, like there's something quite lovely about the episodic nature of television, like kind of the chapters in a book. Like so many series now refer to their episodes as chapters. I mean, Dear White People does, House of Cards does. There's more of an emphasis, I guess, because it's very necessary because of the form. Storytelling becomes a big deal, but I think one of the really wonderful things that has come out of these directors stepping over from film to television is bringing the language of film with them and adapting it to television. Like, take a look at probably the biggest example I can think of recently is Twin Peaks. You know, the cinematic language that David Lynch has brought back to television, and I know that he's, you know, has already done television before, but his return season of Twin Peaks is so cinematic. Almost more cinematic than anything he's ever made for cinema. And it's introducing a new kind of language to what is possible. Like David Fincher, what he did with House of Cards was quite shocking to be like, oh, there's that level of specificity and slickness. And then like directors like Rian Johnson, when he stepped over to do work on Breaking Bad, the language of television is advancing a lot faster than cinema currently is. Certainly in the mainstream arena, all of a sudden we're seeing new, fresh perspectives on how to tell these stories in an episodic nature.
Now, because you can't throw a rock in Hollywood without hitting a comic book movie, talk the last few days has been that the Joker is getting the origin treatment. The Hangover mastermind Todd Phillips is currently attached to direct with Martin Scorsese as producer, and it seems that Marty has thrown his muse Leo DiCaprio's name in the ring to play the titular character. So now that Daniel Craig has officially signed on to play James Bond for the 5th time, our casting talk can turn to who should play the iconic Joker. It's been one of many career-defining roles for Jack Nicholson and earned Heath Ledger an Oscar, the first of its kind awarded for a comic book film. So who should be the next to wear the crimson grin?
This is kind of sidestepping the question, but I don't really think anyone needs to wear the crimson grin in an origin movie for the Joker. Yeah. I don't think the Joker actually needs an origin movie, to be honest. Even without that kind of...
The unknown is what makes him so great.
Yeah,
we don't want to know where he came from. We just want to know that he's the sociopath that he is. Kind of takes something away from it.
Yeah, in the comics he has no origin story. There's a comic written by a guy called Alan Moore called The Killing Joke, which is...
A guy called Alan Moore. Just some guy.
With a beard. It's regarded as being like the best Joker story. And in that one, he kind of goes back and it sort of flashes back into, the Joker's past and, his life as like a failed stand-up comic whose wife dies. And at the end of the story, Joker himself just goes, I can't even remember if that's my past. I'm so crazy that, my history is multiple choice.
He frames it as an idea of you can't trust anything he ever says. And that's one of the most fantastic things about Heath Ledger's performance in The Dark Knight is the fact he continuously changes his background story.
You want to know how I got these scars?
Yeah, like I remember the first time he said that, I was like, oh, that's nice. And the second time he said it, I was like, that's fucking mind-blowing.
Yeah.
And I think origin stories, look, yeah, maybe they're a necessity, but like it just kind of tends to fall into the same basic structure over and over again and becomes really quite dull. I think one of the wonderful things about the recent Spider-Man film was that it wasn't an origin story. We didn't have to go through seeing Uncle Ben be shot and being bitten by the spider. It just got on with it. We know all this stuff. But the Joker just feels like it's clutching at straws. Like it just feels like a really dumb idea for a film, unless the fact that he is essentially a liar who changes his own story continuously becomes the point of the film.
I don't think sort of comic book fans would really enjoy going to the movie and like watch this entire, Scorsese influenced gangster movie. And then at the end, like the Joker turns around and just goes, oh, but that's not really what happened. I think that would like piss a lot of...
It was all a dream.
And also just sounds a little bit too much like the Dark Knight trilogy, which I think in a way is kind of the biggest curse for DC, is that they just seem to they can't let go of it. Like, it was a thing that's kind of weighted down Batman vs. Superman, is the desire for it to be as dark and gritty as Christopher Nolan's films.
Totally, for sure, yeah.
We're sitting here discussing about the idea of who's going to take up playing the part of the Joker. Didn't someone literally play the Joker 12 months ago?
Yes.
Like,
but
why are we...
Here's the thing.
But he was shit. I mean, he was
It should be known that this will be, while under DC's umbrella, it will not be part of the DC cinematic universe. This will be separate from that. So Jared Leto is no longer in contention to play this role.
But to me, that sounds like Gotham. The TV show
so
Gotham?
Who should be?
Hallelujah.
Look, regardless of your opinion of whether it should happen or not, it is happening. So we need to talk about who should play the Joker.
The question that you asked us like 5 minutes ago.
Exactly. The question du jour is who should play the Joker?
You first. Since you're so desperate to get this out of us, you first.
Oh, I don't know. Here's the thing. Heath Ledger was perfection. And when it came up that someone else had to play him, like, my mind was a blank until someone said Jared Leto. And I actually thought that he was a great successor to the role. And he is a great successor to the role. The problem was the film was shit. They wrote the character so badly, and I would love to see him get another crack at it. That's, again, separate from that Suicide Squad abomination. That's not an option. That's not an option.
Respectfully
so
disagree
I would like
so
to,
much.
okay, but I would like to throw just 3 names out there without like really thinking about it. Just 3 names I'm going to throw out there to see how they stick. James McAvoy.
Oh yeah.
Aaron Taylor Johnson,
No.
Sam Claflin.
Oh, no, because I would want Sam Claflin to take his shirt off.
Yeah.
And I don't want to see the Joker topless. That would be really
Like Jared Leto did.
Again.
I don't want it. Well, yeah, I'm just trying to forget that Jared Leto existed. Actually, James McAvoy's not the worst idea. I don't mind that.
Does it have to be like a young Joker, or does the like?
Well, Joker's kind of ageless, isn't it? He's got so much makeup and psychological damage.
That's the thing. I was actually thinking it would be really cool, and again, I think he's probably too old if you're doing an origin story, but it would be so cool to see someone like Kevin Spacey do it.
He's already done Lex Luthor. He's already done Lex Luthor.
Yeah.
He's basically playing the Joker in House of Cards. Like, he plays, like, maybe younger Kevin Spacey, yes, but I kind of feel like I've seen him do that before.
Okay, well, how do we feel about Leo DiCaprio?
Well, it seems very obvious.
Yeah.
Why does the Joker have to be played by someone who's white?
He doesn't. His face will be painted white, which might bring up a whole other issue.
Well, I mean, considering the hundreds of years of the opposite, I don't know if it would necessarily be that much of a problem. But, I mean, that's another idea of another possibility. If we don't know anything about him, why can't we... It would be really interesting to change
It can be anyone.
the public perception of who the Joker could or should be.
I guess if it's an entirely standalone thing, then yeah, what difference does it actually make? But then who, Daniel? Who?
Yeah, that's a good question. My first instinct was to say someone like Michael B. Jordan, but I don't know if necessarily if he would be right for it.
No, I don't feel
I actually I know I'm going back to talking about a white guy, but I know that we talk about him a lot in this podcast, but I actually think Donald Gleason would be a really interesting choice.
Yeah.
To play the Joker.
Yeah.
What about you, Jake? Jake, you're the hardcore.
Yeah, William Dafoe. I think he has that guy has the most scary, unutilized face. I think so. William Dafoe.
But he's already been the Green Goblin.
Yeah, but he wasn't really kind of
he's
creepy.
really
He was under that plastic mask, so he couldn't actually use his weird-looking face.
With his wonderfully crackling voice.
Yeah, and
Spider-Man!
There's another really obscure...
God, he is so great in that film.
There's a really obscure actor called Richard Brake, who I think you probably would have known him. He plays the Night's King on Game of Thrones, underneath all the makeup and stuff. That guy is actually, if you see any of his other movies, he's been in a few Rob Zombie movies. He is an awesome Joker, comic book style Joker. He's just really kind of has the build, has the voice, but once again, he's not sort of a big name.
And he's been in a Batman film before.
Yeah, actually, he was Joe Chill. Yeah.
Ooh, I've got one. What about Mark Hamill?
I was just about to say
Mark
that.
Hamill.
What about Mark Hamill?
Mark Hamill's the Joker in the cartoons. Why not flip it into real life?
Yeah, just do that. Let's just go with that. Mark Hamill. Everyone loves Mark Hamill.
Yeah, fine.
Mark Hamill.
We'll go with that.
Okay, done. End of discussion.
Thank you, Hollywood. We'd like Mark Hamill, please. Thank you, Marty. Marty,
Mark
thank you.
Hamill, please. Thank you.
We will take your millions of dollars in casting.
We have some great giveaways up for grabs this week. We have 5 Blu-ray copies of The Mummy for your viewing enjoyment. Tom Cruise confronts a centuries-old evil that threatens to destroy the world. An ancient princess's terror is unleashed with humanity threatened by her unfathomable malevolence.
Also up for grabs this week is Blue Healers Collection 2. This 44-disc DVD set spans seasons 4 through to 7, as this classic Australian TV series captures the stories of country cops tackling crime and living their lives.
Plus, we have 5 double passes up for grabs to the Lavazza Italian Film Festival. Hitting Sydney, Adelaide, Melbourne, Canberra, Brisbane, Perth and Hobart, this year's festival offers some brilliant cinematic offerings from Italy. For your chance to win this and all of our prizes, head to maketheswitch.com.au/comps now.
And before we go, we would like to offer you some cinematic inspiration, with each of us suggesting one film that you should see this week and why. Now, for me, off the back of our epic golf chat, I'm going for possibly the first ever golf film, Spring Fever, 1927. No, not really.
What? Let's say, what? What? Charlie, what's going on? You muscling in on my turf.
Epic golf films?
No, old, obscure films.
Sorry, I didn't realize you had that copyrighted. No, this one will actually offend Jess, largely because she will be horrified that I have chosen it ahead of her, and she won't be able to. My film this week.
Don't say it. Don't say it.
Is Hocus Pocus.
No! You son of a bitch.
Yes.
Greatest movie ever.
It is so good. Oh
my god.
For something that is a really, B-level Disney film, This is just so fucking amazing.
It's so good. Infinitely quotable.
Oh my god, so many quotes. Jess and I used to just for hours and hours send quotes back and forth to each other from this film. There's just
it was the best. Every Halloween, it was like our tradition.
It's got Bette Midler in it. It's got Sarah Jessica Parker in it. It's got Kathy Najimy in it.
Thora Birch.
Yes, Thora Birch. It's just the most ridiculous, over-the-top witch story that you've ever seen. It's freaking hilarious. It's set in the 90s, and so it's cheesy as all hell. Oh, I love it to death. It's like one of those childhood favorites I will never, ever...
Yes. And with Halloween just around the corner, it is perfect.
And not just Halloween, but also its anniversary. It's not too far off either. It's coming up next year, so yeah. That's my suggestion for this week. Sit down with your kids and watch that one. Jess, how about you this week?
Okay, my film you should not watch with the kids. It's an under the radar. It was actually a semi-big film, but under the radar because it had the most woeful release because it was banned and taken out and what have you. But it's fantastic. It's called I Love You, Philip Morris.
Oh yeah.
Oh, the film from the guys who created who did Crazy Stupid Love.
Yes, Glenn Ficarra and John Requa, that's right. So this is their first directorial film, and it stars Jim Carrey and Ewan McGregor, and it's actually a true story. Jim Carrey plays a married father who discovers that he's gay, and to keep up his fabulous new gay lifestyle, he ends up becoming a con man so he can, swindle millions from people. He goes to jail. He ends up falling in love with a fellow inmate played by Ewan McGregor. He eventually escapes jail, tries to get his lover out. It goes back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. This man escaped prison and tricked the government so many times that I think it was Senator or Governor George W. Bush at the time actually banned him from the state because he was such a mark on their reputation. And it's so funny, and it's actually really beautiful as well. It's a beautiful love story. It's hilarious. It's got fantastic performances by Jim Carrey and Ewan McGregor. And because it's all based on a true story and it's so fascinating, highly, absolutely, and actually highly recommended.
This sounds like the future the Liberals don't want to see happen. It's like, list every possible Liberal nightmare and you got it in this film.
Yeah.
Okay, what about you this week, Daniel?
All right, I'm going to go with, for film buffs, it's a pretty obvious one, but I was listening to the soundtrack this morning and went, nah, fuck it, I'm going to bring up this one. It is another classic film, the 1949 masterpiece, The Third Man. For anyone who hasn't seen it, I highly recommend it. For those who have, you know exactly why. It is a wonderful British noir thriller where a pulp western novelist named Holly Martins, played by Joseph Cotton, goes to the city of Vienna just post the Second World War. And at the time, Vienna was divided up between the French, the British, and the Americans. So there was and in the center of the city was a kind of a no man's land where law and order didn't necessarily follow the same rules. He's come to Vienna to visit his friend Harry Lime, but upon arriving discovers that Harry has actually died a few days beforehand in a car accident. And he's in the process of trying to discover what happened to Harry. Holly starts to find out that this story might be a lot more complicated than he expects. It has tremendously wonderful performances. The cast is fantastic. Not only Joseph Cotton, but you've also got Alida Valli and Trevor Howard, and a performance from Orson Welles in probably, I think, his best screen performance. And I would say that above his performance in Citizen Kane. The cinematography is spectacular. The score is wonderful by Anton Karas. And it's a tremendously funny, wicked, witty, and very dark film. It was actually voted in a British Film Institute poll a few years ago. The British public actually voted it the greatest British film of all time. So it's an endlessly entertaining and tremendously fascinating film. And it's also just been re-released on Blu-ray in Australia recently after a 4K restoration. So it's relatively easy to get. So yes, The Third Man, fucking great film. Go and see it.
And Jake, what have you got in store for us this week?
My pick this week is a pretty dark, kind of depressing and unpleasant movie. It's the 1993 British drama...
You have my attention.
The 1993 British drama Naked by Mike Leigh. So it stars David Thewlis as Johnny. And Johnny is a motor-mouthed intellectual / wandering misogynist who gets in a bit of trouble in Manchester and then goes to crash in London with his ex-girlfriend. From there, hilarity ensues, and so Johnny just goes like wandering around the streets of London and just meeting a variety of troubled locals and getting involved in their tangled lives, and just a really amazing movie. If you watch it, the movie actually feels like it's all improvised. Like the dialogue is just like so naturalistic. The dialogue is like all scripted. Just the actors like are so good. Yeah, has anyone actually seen a Mike Leigh film before?
I've seen a few. I haven't seen Naked, but I have seen a few other Mike Leigh films. They're pretty unrelenting. Like you often walk out of them feeling like you've kind of been beaten with a stick, like a socially aware stick. But they're quite something.
Yeah, it's just like, it's really absorbing. It's like this, Naked especially just kind of feels like, Johnny is like a super unpleasant character, but also really charming. He's just a really good anti-hero, and he just gets dropped in this like sort of really kind of dark fairy tale of a story, and it's just like, it's London at like 1 a.m. I saw it for the first time maybe on SBS. It was like sort of on midnight on SBS. I just done some uni work or something and came home, switched this movie on, and just immediately got sucked into this. Well worth tracking down, and easily David Thewlis's best performance. I mean, like Wonder Woman, he was pretty amazing as the guy with the moustache. But this one, he also has a moustache and a beard. And
that was a close second.
Yeah.
You couldn't hold on to the serious conversation for too long, Jake. You just needed to throw some sort of barb back in there somehow. How can we bring up?
I saw this movie and I was just like, David Thewlis is like the greatest living actor. I was like so impressed by his performance. And then over the years, I've just like seen him in these movies which aren't quite as good. And
degraded over time.
Yeah, aside from like Harry Potter, he was pretty good in Harry Potter as the werewolf dude.
Professor Lupin.
Yeah. Anyway, highly recommend Naked.
Well, some very diverse suggestions this week, and you can find the links to all the articles we've talked about on this week's podcast at maketheswitch.com.au. Please subscribe to SWITCHCast on iTunes or your favourite podcast platform, and don't forget to rate us. And stay in touch on Twitter. I'm at Charlie_David. Jess.
I'm Miss Jess _Switch.
Daniel.
At Daniel Lamon.
And Jake.
At Jake Chatty.
Like it, follow it. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at MakeTheSwitchAU to stay up to date with all the latest reviews, news, trailers, and giveaways.
And you can find all the notes and links to everything we've discussed on this week's podcast, as well as other episodes, by visiting switchcast.com.au.
On next week's show, I'll share my verdict on patty cakes and I Am Not Your Negro.
Plus, I'll take a look at New Zealand's horror theme park doco Spookers. Thanks so much for listening. We'll see you all next week.